Welcome to the base space.
Yeah, happy to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I think we're in good shape to get started here. Super Chase, you guys good to go on your side?
Yeah, sounds good to me. Hey, Jim, welcome to the base space.
Hey, what's up, Chase?
What up?
What's up, Super High?
No, it's a long name.
And then we got the Crypto Mewtwo. What's up, fellas?
What's up, man? Welcome to the space. Yeah, so Jim, a little bit about the base space. We kind of just, I initially got into the Twitter beta for Twitter Spaces, and yeah, it was just initially just a bunch of friends messing around, having fun, and slowly turned into a community. And now we provide just an educational platform and educate people on all different types of crypto projects that we feel are really based. So,
Dope, yeah. Happy
yeah,
to be
man.
here.
Yeah, it's super casual. It's we have all types of listeners, everyone from advanced to beginners. So it's been really cool.
Yeah, it sounds dank, man. I mean, I love Spaces. I mean, it's kind of shit like the actual app, but I mean, they're improving it, and I think it's a really good thing because it's like CT has always been like a community, but you don't really like put a voice to a face, right? Like, not all of us have our IRL photos. And that just like solidifies connections, I just like feel closer to everyone as a result.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I've noticed lately, because we've been doing spaces now for several months, and they're kind of like hit and miss in between, kind of small groups. But one thing I've noticed is like the NFC community has like really been blowing up spaces lately. I don't know if anybody else has kind of been catching that train any.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I've seen them. I've seen the NFT Twitter space just like really leverage like spaces a lot. I mean, if you're going to talk about Twitter spaces, you got to talk about Deez, the community manager for Fractional. He's just doing them for like 6-7 hours a day as like basically like his job. And just highlighting like really cool art, really cool projects. Obviously, all these like big PFP projects they're doing. They're AMAs and community calls and Twitter Spaces too. And I haven't really seen that translate as much in the DeFi, and definitely not really as much in like call it like the crypto space that isn't DeFi and isn't NFTs. So it's like DAO governance, novel mechanism design, stuff like that. Uh, so yeah, I think there's definitely like a ton of space, like a ton of white space in order to provide a place where people can talk about DeFi, can talk about crypto, trading, DAOs, governance, blah blah blah, right? Merge, other chains, stuff like that. So quite bullish to be here so that we can give people that space.
Yeah, 100%. I think like the only other spaces I see in crypto that are really popping off are some of like the Bitcoin related spaces with like a few hundred people.
You should come to my spaces, man. I do them. I do them at 6 p.m. Eastern every Thursday. I bring on some GigaBrain Taoists. We just talk about DAO governance, funding public goods, ETH2 merge, shit like that.
Oh, that's based, bro. Yeah, I'm probably working though.
Oh, come on. Work. What an opportunity cost, man.
Nah, I feel you, man. Still doing the nine to five type of grind. So
It's okay, man. You got one headphone in. Oh no, you're not working remote, right? That's probably why.
nah, partially remote, but I'm on like the phone pretty much all day. So
I feel.
yeah,
Not gonna cut it then. You gotta work. Yeah, we're good. Fully distributed tech job, man. They don't know what the fuck you do in any hour of the day.
True that, man. True that. But
Yeah. Or the true GigaBrain is you work at a crypto company where it's your literal job to do this, like me.
Yeah, I should start Mew Finance soon. We're gonna offer 1,000x leverage.
There we go, baby. Instant liquidation. Oh, you want to lose all your money immediately? Yeah, let's just do this.
Yeah, for sure. So Jim, like, what we haven't had you on the space obviously before, and I always like to ask like new folks that come on the space, like, how'd you actually get involved in crypto?
Yeah, sure. So I've been in crypto since 2016. I had a friend talk to me about like Ethereum. Yeah. So I had a friend who's like, obviously got into Bitcoin early because he was on Silk Road. Um, and he was like telling me about Bitcoin when I was in university with him. And I was like, nah, man, I don't really get this. Like, this is super shady. And then 2016, we were juniors. He was like, dude, like, people are like, don't talk about Bitcoin anymore. Like, talk about this thing called like Ether. Like, it's like programmable money. It's like Bitcoin, but like way crazier. And I was like, okay, like, I can fuck with that actually. And so I like went down a little bit of a rabbit hole. I bought a bunch of ETH. And it kind of was like more of like a trader investor for a few years. I didn't like really go deep in the rabbit hole until like everything kind of just like died in 2018, and I was basically like a really stupid person. I basically just like diamond handed all that shit down like 90%, and I was like, okay, like I'm in it for the tech, right? Like I believe in this. This is the future, right? I'm not sad. You know, I'm like that like soy jack meme where it's like you're crying but you wear like the happy, like the smiley mask. Um, so I started researching more about it. I read the white paper, I read the yellow paper, read the beige paper, read the rainbow papers, and I was like, okay, like I actually really, really fuck with this. Um, and at the time, I was working full time at like a corporate job. I was a management consultant at McKinsey, and I was like, oh man, like I'm gonna do this, but like this, like I really, really, really want to work in crypto. And so in 2019, I actually went into crypto. I actually worked at Ripple as a product manager for 2 years. I picked Ripple because, well, one, I just like didn't really know what I was doing, and two, like in 2019, we were still like in the deep crypto winter, and I was like, okay, like all these other like small rinky dink companies, like they, I don't know what's going to happen to them, and I kind of need job security. So I picked one of the big ones, right? I applied to like Coinbase and Binance US and Ripple, and ultimately picked Ripple. So I was there for 2 years. It was an interesting experience, kind of like building within this own kind of like isolated community. And then I discovered, kind of like rediscovered Ethereum in 2020 with DeFi Summer, with like YAM and UniV2 and like liquidity mining, comp mining, and everything. And I was like, wow, like this is super cool. And like I met like a really good community in Ethereum. And so I quit Ripple basically the end of 2020. Was kind of just like wandering around for a while, participating in some DAOs, like doing some kind of like advisory consulting for some friends who made it like super crypto rich and want to start their own funds. And then I joined Unstoppable in May, I think, as a PM again, building what I call like platforms. So it's like I talk to people in the community and other devs to like build new use cases using the standards that we've built. So it's kind of like a really good gig because it's like I get to just like chill with the community and also like just like hear what they want to build and what they need to build. And I basically have an eng team in order to prioritize that. So I'm like co-building the future with everyone. It's like pretty much like the sickest gig ever.
Yeah, that sounds really based. I'm kind of jealous.
Be
That's
jealous of me, man. Join crypto full time.
Yeah, I'm actually curious, like how much do you contribute diamond handing that like massive L when the bubble popped with like actually keeping your interest within the market, right? Because I feel like a lot of people who probably sold just straight up like left crypto completely and their interest went elsewhere. Like, do you feel like that kind of like kept you tied into the market?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would definitely say yes. And it was more just like sunk cost fallacy. I was just like, oh man, like, fuck, like, I guess I might as well just like hold on to this. But it definitely gave me like skin in the game to like invest more time to read about it and like kind of like delude myself. At least that's how I felt at the time, that like this was going to go up again. And I was like, oh, I totally believe in the tech. Cause like I see a lot of people like they lose a lot of money. Like a lot of my friends like that ate in the ETH at like 1100 or whatever. Um, and like it went all the way down to like, it was slow. It was like it was at 7 and at 550, and after a while it went to 2, and like people were just like, fuck this, like I'm gonna sell this, like, and I'm just gonna like move on in my life, and like I hate crypto. Um, but like, and like I think people just like they have such a, like a limited attention span, right? It's like you have other shit going on. It's like, it's like you have your job, or like you have like your normal life with your friends and your family, and um like other obligations, right? So it's like you only have so much mental capacity. So it's like, honestly, like I think I was literally just like lucky or like stupid enough to like hold it and like have it as an impetus to actually explore and go deeper down the rabbit hole from like an actual builder perspective.
No, I think it takes a certain mindset to really dive deep into crypto and to even start to venture around. I feel like a lot of people are just initially in it for like the quick gains and the fast cash in a sense, and they don't actually understand the technology behind it or what's happening within the community. So it seems like you obviously had an interest. Um, did you have an interest in economics or finance before actually venturing into crypto?
Yeah, I'd always like traded stonks. So it was like kind of like a pretty similar analogy. So I'd, like I traded stonks and leverage. I did derivatives. So it was just like that similar dopamine hit. Um, yeah, I think like when you look at people's journeys into crypto, it always starts with like a kind of like a transactional relationship. And so, before like 2021, I would say most people's foray into crypto is like with trading. It's like, oh, like this insanely volatile asset. Like I can make a shit ton of money if I like go long on like Doge or Sheep or some shit like that, right? Um, and then they're like, oh, like, wait, like this tech is actually like pretty crazy, right? If you think about Ethereum, other smart contract platforms, or if you just think about like money, right? If you just think about like Monero, you're like, oh, like privacy first, like instant money around the world, like that's pretty wild. And then you kind of get deeper, like, and it actually took me a while to like get to this third level, which was like, oh, like crypto isn't like, it's not just something to make money. It's also just not technology. It's actually like a movement for like kind of like taking back control over things that were taken away from us, like as the internet kind of matured. So it's like things like data privacy, like things like predatory loans from banks, and like having like a strange relationship with your bank. And so, yeah, like I just think like there's so many layers that get deeper and deeper. And now in 2021, it's like I think a lot of people like they either like flip JPEGs or they're like in it for the art, and then like they go deeper in the rabbit hole too. I think we're still seeing a lot of like noobs and normies who are like getting wrecked on like OpenSea JPEG flipping, and we're gonna see them, like maybe in 6 months, be like super crypto pilled and like actually start building.
Yeah, that's one thing that I find like really fascinating. You kind of touch on this, Jim, is just like the it's almost kind of like a tiered level of insight of like what this market is turning into, and especially if you've been in since like 2017. You had talked about you had got in the market in 2017. We've talked about this before on the space, but it's like back then there was really no functionality, right? You basically were buying into something, hoping the price goes up, and you trade it and sell it to something else. There really was no depth to the actual market back then. And so, just moving forward now, it's like you're talking about. You have like the NFTs, you have DeFi. Like, what does it kind of look like from your eyes, just kind of seeing it progress so much since 2017?
Yeah, it's been pretty crazy seeing the progression. It's kind of funny because like a lot of these things that are super popular now, like they didn't come out of nowhere. Like I remember when I joined, um, like DAOs were already a thing, right? Like we had the DAO hack, maybe like a year before that. Was it in 2015? Maybe either 2015 or 2016, because I know ETH went live on Mainnet in 2015. I was like, oh, like DAOs, like they've been here forever, right? And they fucking suck. And then I remember like DeFi came out too, around like call it. I mean, like Maker came out early, but like Uni and Bancor, they came out in like 2017, I want to say. And I was like, like this is a toy. Like no one wants this shit, right? And NFTs came out, and I was like, this is also really dumb. And then all of a sudden, it's like not dumb. I don't know like what was the right like kind of like inflection point, right? Like NFTs weren't dumb anymore in January 2021. DeFi wasn't dumb anymore in August 2020. DAOs weren't dumb anymore in, call it, April 2021, right? So it's been kind of interesting because it's like these are things that like everyone's been talking about for a while, and it's like you just kind of have to be patient. And so like I mean like free out for folks in the room and like things that people are just like constantly talking about right now that just hasn't hit that like true like mania level inflection point yet for me are social tokens and gaming. Like this is just shit that people have been talking about forever and like they just haven't hit their heyday yet, right? And I think like we're gonna hit that and like Normie's gonna write like hear about it, the New York Times is gonna write about it. It's just gonna be wild. So I think those are two of the many things that I think are gonna happen that are just gonna be like absolutely bonkers.
Yeah, we had Axie and Fandy on. How long has it been? Maybe like a month or so, 2 months ago. And it's been like just amazing to kind of like get that level of insight. We had Jiho on, and then just see like the absolute explosion of Axie during the last like just a few months. So yeah, I'm right there with you. Then we also had like Illuvium as well. So like just like having these like AAA blockchain games within this ecosystem is just going to be a game changer where people are going to be able to monetize their passion.
Yeah, totally. Illuvian, who started Illuvian again? It's like the brother of someone famous in crypto, right?
Yeah, it's I think it's three brothers. Warwick,
Oh
I
yeah,
believe.
it's
So it's
Kane's brother.
Kane,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
from Synthetics, and then it's two brothers with Illuvium, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you guys have played Axie. I have. It fucking sucks. Like, let's be intellectually honest, guys, but like there's something there, right? Like that's product market fit. Like when people do something truly shitty and like still do it and like love it, quote unquote, like that's pretty telling. A lot of people are like, oh, Ponzi anomalous, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, like I choose not to see the negative in it. Like spaces, for example, like spaces, like every time I do spaces, like it rugs me, right? Like mid conversation just like dies, my phone dies, like drains on my battery. And yet I still do it every day, right? That's product market fit.
Yeah, exactly, man. It's just all about getting started, and it's so cool to see so many projects be innovative and just get started and just start executing. And over time, these products will continue to improve. These games will continue to improve. And I love NFTs, man. They're bringing so many new people into the space. I just can't wait for it to go like super mainstream and everyone's able to just play games and actually make a living off of it. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty dank. Although, like, it has been pretty interesting to see the implications of like these new people coming into like the community. And obviously, like, if you're a DeFi degen like me, you've seen just like the conversation of crypto Twitter completely flip towards like JPEGs, right? Like Pengus and Ether rocks and like art blocks and stuff like that. Um, like I think there's like cultural like implications to like what's happening when like you get people who like don't give a fuck about crypto. They just want to trade. Like they were Top Shots people until they found out about like Ethereum in like January. It's pretty interesting because like then you see clashes, right? You see friction. And it's pretty fascinating in my mind from just like I have like a social sciences background, so it's like from an anthropological standpoint, I'm just like shit, like this is wild. Like I'm seeing just like in groups like form and clash like live on this like little corner of the internet.
I, it's so funny because it's so true and it's so interesting. It's so like just human nature to split into your little tribe. I feel like, um, so yeah, it is extremely interesting.
Yeah, Chase, we were literally just talking about that last night. Yeah, no, I think people get really, really stuck in their zone, and I think it's like super important to just not become like an extreme maxi, because that's what I see happening with all different types of projects, NFTs, and just always keep an open mind and exploring, because this is like the very beginning of this whole journey, and you just don't want to miss anything or get kind of any type of tunnel vision.
Yeah, just to add on to that, and Jim, you're even touching on this. I think just talking about how like the growth expansion that we've seen in the market. But I feel like there's so much innovation that occurs so quickly. And if you become tunnel visioned and become kind of like a maxi on a particular area, you get blinded and you kind of get left behind. And you kind of like miss all the new like information that's coming out. I'm actually curious, Jim, you had talked about product market fit earlier and just kind of general products, but I'd be curious, like, one, I guess, how long have you been with Unstoppable Domains? But two, my main question is just kind of what were some of the early lessons you learned while actually building out Unstoppable Domains and actually kind of like creating a product in this fast moving pace like ecosystem?
Sure. So I've been in Unstoppable for like 4 months now, I think. But I'm like almost hitting OG status because it's like when I joined, we were like 38 people, and now we're like almost 80. So we've just like gone straight parabolic. And so people are like, oh, like Jimmy, like he's been here a while. I'm like, I mean, 4 months, I guess. But I guess like if you're in crypto land for like 4 months does feel like forever. Um, so yeah, so sorry, what was the question, was like the learnings I had or like the
Yeah,
problems I
just,
had?
well, I guess I had kind of framed it as like early lessons learned, but 4 months is kind of not the longest time. But in crypto, it moves fast. But yeah, just kind of like what are some lessons that you learned that were kind of like uh, unexpected as you entered into this like arena?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm trying to think. So I think like what people need to know if you're like people who are like aren't familiar with like product management and like building for such a fast moving industry is like in like my company, like Unstoppable is like early, right? We're still quite small. Is like shit is just like broken all the time, and there are people just screaming in your ear about like how to improve it, right? You have people from sales slash BD. You have people from marketing. You have people from legal, engineering. You have your customers, right? They're all just like, you need this, you need this, you need this, and it's like when you're in a product position, like your job is to say like, hey, like I'm gonna do 3 of those, and then I'm gonna live with the rest. And if people don't like that, then I'll put my money in my mouth. Is like if I think people are gonna leave because of it, then like I'm a shit person. Like I'm doing a shit job, right? And like you should fucking fire me. Um, but for the most part, like I've gotten good to the point where it's like I know like what those 3 things I need to do are, and like I do it really really well, right? And like that's like that's like kind of like the nature of like being a PM, like in like an early stage company. And so the learnings for me were just like, yeah, I'd come from Ripple, which was like way bigger, right? Like when I left, there were like what, like 700 people or so. Um, so my learning from like coming from something that was a little bit bigger into something that was smaller was just like there's just so much to do. Like almost as like like kind of like an additive thing, right? So it's like if you're in PM role, like everything's broken, like you're trying to fix things. But when you're an early stage startup, it's like, especially in crypto, it's like, oh, you can do a bajillion things, right? In addition to fixing the shit that's wrong, right? And I think it's up to me to like also like trying to determine like what are the most interesting things I can experiment with, and like try to limit like how much investment we have into that from like a money perspective, from like a people perspective, from a time perspective, right? Just to have some learnings. Um, and so a great EG is um, like like my founder CEO Matt, like he was like, oh, like what's going on with like avatar PFPs? Like, should we do something with that? And like that was like literally like all he gave me, right? And I was like, like should we do something with that? Probably. And so like maybe I'll pin a tweet up in a sec. Like we're doing a collaboration with Deadheads that's gonna be announced next week. That I think is gonna be pretty fucking sick. But I had to do it in a way that was like, I didn't take like half of my company to like do this shit, right? For like 6 months. It's like, no, I had one person for 2 weeks. Like, what can you do? And what are we gonna learn from that? And so that's kind of like, I don't know, a little bit of learning for me. It was just like, okay, like how do you take all these good ideas, how you prioritize them, and how do you like scale down what you can deliver into like in order to maximize learnings.
That's awesome. I really appreciate you sharing that insight. And like one thing that really stood out to me is just this interesting dynamic with how the game is completely changed when it comes to a company's allegiance. So, like you talked about, just all the different stakeholders of opinions that you need to consider, from like your users, your customers, your stakeholders, everyone, right? But from the corporate world where you came from previously, really the only allegiance was, I mean, kind of your customer, of course, but outside that, it's just the shareholders. And so, like, it's going to be really interesting moving forward to kind of see this like dynamic continue to play out in this industry.
Totally, man. Yeah, fucking crazy times.
Musu, do you want to touch on the next side of questions?
Sure. Yeah, right on. Jim, can you kind of dive into like the actual importance of owning a domain, and like at the most basic level for even like a newcomer who doesn't even understand like what a domain is?
Oh man. This is good. This is good. I need to do this. This is a good exercise. So a domain is like, so let's separate this question into two different parts. One is like, what is a domain? And the second thing is like, why is it important for it to be decentralized? And so a domain is like basically it is like what's the best way to put it? So it's like like those things that like are like website names that just like like give you access to websites. So it's like google.com, right? And so google.com is like a domain, and what you're actually getting is like it's kind of like a key for like a value that it resolves, right? And so when you get google.com, you get like I used to know the IP address of google.com. I don't know anymore. But it goes into an IP address, right? And how that works is like there's basically this like centralized database that's like google.com equals this IP address, right? It's like one entry of like a huge database. And so when you enter google.com, every website browser knows, okay, I'm actually going to like send a request into this big centralized database, and I'm going to return the IP address. And the IP address is actually the thing that gives you content, right? You send like an HTTP request or an HTTPS request in this case, and you get some shit back, right? You get data back that then your browser reads or client reads, and it's like, okay, cool. Like, ta-da, like this is the google.com page with the search bar and stuff like that. So that is a domain. And why it's important for it to be decentralized is, so like let's go back to like that centralized like DB that I was telling you about, right? Like every time you go to the web browser, it goes and it reads like google.com equals this IP address, right? So I mean, I've said the word centralized a few times, so it's kind of like a dead giveaway. Like it's centralized, so like it lives somewhere, right? And in this case, it doesn't even live on like something that we're familiar with. It's not like some sort of like Postgres DB that like like is like pretty scalable and stuff like that. It's probably like living in like some sort of like Oracle DB, like owned by this big like some of these big companies that basically own these domain names, right? And so if you know like GoDaddy and like Namecheap, like these people like actually don't own these domains. They're resellers, so they buy them and flip them to us, or like they operate for us. Like these companies are called like VeriSign or like these like long boomer ass names that like own these DVs, right? It's like they're it's like some old school shit. And so when you look at the current state and you look at like what it means to be decentralized, like what we're trying to do is like we're taking that like centralized like DB and like the centralized like boomer company that's running it, and we're basically like disintermediating them, right? So we're putting it on Ethereum. So in the smart contract, on EVM, we have a smart contract called the registry. It's basically the same shit. It's a table, right? It goes, hey, 0xgym.dao or 0xgym.crypto or a bunch of other like top level domains equals my ETH address, right? Which is like, I don't know, 0x7BA, I don't know, some shit like that. And why is that important? It's important because now, because you have that disintermediation, well, one thing is it's never down, right? The analog is like, has Uniswap ever been down? No, it fucking hasn't. But Coinbase has been down all the time. And so it's a really similar analog. The second thing is it's censorship resistant, right? And so a great, I have two awesome analogies for you, crypto related. One was literally last week, Wallet Connect. If you guys are familiar with Wallet Connect, their website .org got flagged by Namecheap as like doing like suspicious activity, right? I mean, they're a crypto company, but apparently they were erroneously flagged. I don't fucking know. Anyway, their shit was down for like, call it like 12 hours, and people were freaking the fuck out. Like I have a friend, he works at Rainbow, and he was like, yeah, that sucked, right? It's like, yeah, but people use Rainbow to connect to dApps on their web browser. And you can't do that with Wallet Connects down. And that's because like some centralized party that no one gives a like that no one even thinks about on a day-to-day basis just like flagged you and like turned off your service, right? Which is like pretty crazy. The second one is like they're an attack vector. And so GoDaddy actually got phished. Like an employee at GoDaddy got phished, and it was the account manager for Liquid.com, Liquid like the Asia-based crypto exchange. And so because it got phished, they were able to point Liquid.com to a similar looking site that wasn't run by Liquid. And so people were entering in like their password, account information, like their keys and all this shit. And this shit got jacked because, an attack vector that, again, if you're an operator of these companies, you don't even fucking think about on a day-to-day basis. And so like decentralization is like really important in that regard. And so what we're trying to offer people is like essentially that assurance by like, again, like disintermediation away from those like partners that like have previously offered this like legacy system to you in the form of like this database lookup.
Yeah, you're essentially removing the middleman and also providing an extra layer of security. If I'm hearing you correctly.
Yeah, definitely. And like I think where it gets kind of interesting and hard to articulate succinctly is like we're taking this mechanism of like a decentralized database with like some sort of like human readable name, and we're using it as like the ability to add any arbitrary data into that name, right? And so like that's where like if you want, like, you don't even have to just like resolve a website, right? You can resolve like a crypto address. And so if people want to send money to me, feel free to do so, by the way. 0xgym.dao. If you want to send me Bitcoin, ETH, Monero, Zcash, blah, 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 what the fuck. You could do that, right? Like you just enter it into a compatible wallet and send it, so you don't have to think about all these like different wallet addresses that you have to like copy and paste or scan a QR code for. And you can do a bunch of other novel stuff that we're kind of cooking up. You could see like a future, like crazy dystopian world, or not dystopian, but futuristic world where it's like you can enter your electronic medical records there, and there's a zero knowledge proof so that no one can read it, which doesn't occur right now. You can still read all the like data that you append to your name right now because we're not in a zero knowledge world. But you can do that, and then you can permission it to the right healthcare provider so that they can like see your medical history and shit like that. But you don't share it to like your insurer, right? So they're like, that's always the fear of electronic medical records. It's like, oh, like the doctor can see it, but also my insurance company can see it, so they see I have a pre-existing condition. So this is like a very American specific thing. But like you don't have to do that in this like EMR world where you have like zero knowledge proofs appended to your name.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, there's a ton of advantages to this type of technology. I was also curious, like, why you guys chose to like not have any renewal fees with the service.
I mean, like, I think it's just like to the ethos of what we're trying to do, right? It's like your name forever. I'm not quite sure how like other like products do it, or like they have a renewal fee. Like I don't know how that works from like a decentralization perspective. Is there like some sort of like time-based escrow that happens? I don't know. I haven't really peered underneath the hood. But for us, it's like, yeah, we're just gonna like we own it. We're just gonna send it to you, and now you own it. Now, congrats! Like it's yours forever. Like we have nothing to do with that. It just makes intuitive sense to me.
That's awesome. From a technical perspective, I don't have a ton of knowledge but is it IPFS that enables a lot of this to occur? And if so, could you kind of like dive into that? Or if the answer is yes, and that's kind of like what you just went over.
Yeah, so the short answer is yes. You could upload your files into IPFS, which is like a peer-to-peer content storage system. Kind of like, it has the same mechanism as like seeding and pairing that I think happens at like Pirate Bay and like LimeWire and shit like that. So you could do that. For us, like and I'm like full disclosure, I'm like super homies with like the Protocol Labs people. So IPFS, IPNS, Filecoin, like that shit that I enjoy and I respect. But we're definitely agnostic from like what distributed content management or content provider rather, or content distributed content storage or content provider that you need to have. And so like you could see a world where like you put it on Arweave, right? Or you can put it on Swarm. I think Swarm. It's like one of those like earlier Ethereum-based distributed content management protocols. So like we're unopinionated, right? But I would say like the best tooling happens with IPFS right now, and so we've been pretty close partners with them because like our value proposition doesn't make a ton of sense if like you're just using our naming standard and like not adding some sort of like distributed content in the back end.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. No, I saw them listed on your guys' website, and I've seen them before. So it's just more they're just kind of a one solution of many that are emerging in this market.
Yeah, definitely. And then for folks like that are curious, like the differences of what I just outlined, like IPFS like is distributed, but I would not say like it's not like it runs forever, right? Like Ethereum in theory like runs forever because of the nodes that uphold the system and validate state changes to the virtual machine. IPFS is basically like, again, it's like LimeWire. It's like someone needs to like store this file locally, like this complete file locally, and multiple people store it on this like distributed protocol, and then you like request this content to be retrieved when you hit a request into one of the IPFS like gateways or endpoints, right? And so you can see a world where like people just don't store it anymore, right? And like that's not like a crazy thing that like could occur. And so in like 10, 30 years, it's like, no one stores your fucking, like your dog JPEG PFP anymore, right? Even though it was supposed to be quote unquote like decentralized. And so you kind of like shit out of luck. So like that's like one thing. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? And like Filecoin, I think, adds a layer of like economic incentives on top of it in order to actually ensure like the perpetuity of this information storage. But then you have Arweave, which is like more like it's like I'm not exactly sure, but like it kind of prevents that from happening, right? So it's like I think they like shard all the information and it's like distributed a bunch of nodes, and so it's a little bit it's more just like the iteration, a bit more tamper proof and future proof than IPFS.
Hey, so Jim, can you go more in depth on how the payments work? Like, say you send a superhigh.eth. Can that be linked to like a different wallet address, or does that have to be to your main address?
Yeah, man. No, that's a good question. I would say so. Again, like .eth is ENS, right? Ethereum Name Service, which is a slightly different kind of implementation than what we do. But I can talk about how we do it on our end, and I'm sure like there's going to be a good amount of overlap. And so what? Yeah.
Or superhigh.frog. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel.
My
No,
bad.
all good. So for us, like we have two separate smart contracts on Ethereum. One is called the registry and one is called the resolver. And so the registry is like this DB that I was telling you about, right? It's like 0xgym.dao equals, my ETH address. And that's like the owner of this and has like write access to all like to be able to like overwrite or add new data that can be returned like if you were to like look up 0xgym.dao, right? So that's the registry. The resolver is kind of like the complement of that, where it's like, okay, like this is like where you actually store more information, right? And so for like the technical folks, like 0xgym.dao, like you can have like you can append like more information to it as metadata with like different fields, right? And so it's like that's where you add like eth.address or btc.address. This is like the actual nomenclature of the protocol that we use. Zcash.address, right? Or you have like erc20.eth.address, right? If it's like multi-chain. And so from a client perspective, right, your app, like what happens is if you're trying to send me money and you go 0xgym.dao, it's actually making a request to our resolver contract and saying, okay, like what happens with 0xgym.dao, right? And I can do one of two things. One is like if you just say, hey, give me everything that 0xgym.dao has, I'll just give you everything in some sort of like JSON blob, right? It'll just be like everything, like my BTC, my ETH address, my IPFS hash, other kind of arbitrary shit that I've decided to append to it. But if you add an additional field, you go, hey, I just want the ETH address because I'm a payments app and this person is just trying to send ETH to me. It'll just return my ETH address, right? And so when it's sending, it's still sending to my ETH address, but there's a layer of abstraction underneath it, right? So it's like if you ever like if you try to use an app and you go 0xgym.dao, it will actually return the ETH address. So it's not like you're actually sending it to 0xgym.dao. No, you're still sending it to my ETH address. There's just like this quick lookup function essentially that happens in order to ensure like easier user experience.
Oh, okay. So could you also well, first off, thank you for going in depth. That now makes more sense. And can you also touch on the resolution the resolution algorithm?
Sure, yeah. So it's like it's not really an algo, it's just like a really simple like you like send a request, right? And then you get like a response. And so like let's say the request is like 0xgym.dao, like comma, like eth.address, right? Then it's just gonna it's gonna go, okay, I want to look up the entry that has 0xgym.dao. Okay, cool. There's also a bunch of other additional fields to it, right? Okay, now I want to do a second like sub lookup for ETH address. Okay, cool. Now I found like this, alphanumeric string. I'm just going to return that now. That's basically like what the robots are doing.
Got it. Thank
Hey, Jim.
Chase, were you?
Yeah. Jim, you had touched on how you guys have like two smart contracts. I know you guys are also integrated with Chainlink. Could you kind of expand on that, like what that relationship looks like? And also, one thing that I find like really interesting, I want to dive into is just kind of about the online identity and be able to like link across the Web3 ecosystem.
Sure, man. So I'll double click. I'll kind of like separate this into two different components. So one is like what the Chainlink like integration when Unstoppable is. And then the second thing is like what we've actually built is kind of like call it the reference implementation for this. Or just like call it just like the first use case for inspiration. And so we built basically a way to do off-chain verification of like any sort of like arbitrary account that you want to tie to your domain name, right? And so you can see this is pretty powerful because we have like all sorts of like disparate identities that are floating around in like this like quasi metaverse. And so you have like your Twitter, your LinkedIn, your Instagram, your Get account, like all these things. And so like they all kind of just like represent different parts of you. And again, like the vision for like our domain names has always been like, again, it's a name that returns a bunch of information for you, right? And so it makes a ton of sense that like there should be a level of verification that like if you were to look at my name, I would give you my Twitter account, but it would be verified on chain that that's actually my Twitter account, right? It's like I can't just put like anyone's Twitter account. And that's pretty interesting because then there's like this trustlessness of like, okay, like you're actually who you say you are, right? And that's good because one, like, let's say you're trying to send me money. It's like, oh, like this person linked his like actual Twitter account. Like I trust Jim, right? Like this person seems like a real ass person. And I'm not saying it's like a fake account or like or like a not even like a real account, right? So that's pretty good. The second thing is like you can think about as some form of like anti-civil resistance, which it basically means like you are human, right? It's like you're not like a bunch of bots that are trying to like like game some sort of like system, some sort of like vote, or like let's say you can game some sort of uh like let's say let's say like a dex had like a competition, or like yeah, that's a good one. So it's like the Uniswap drop, right? So it's like everyone got 400 uni. It was a fair drop. You in theory could have just like spun up a bunch of addresses, just like get a bunch of the uni, right? Had you known beforehand that they would have done that shadow, like that kind of like last minute drop. And so anti-civil resistance is like, no, like you are who you say you are, boom, done, right? um, so it's pretty cool. That's like kind of like what we wanted to do at a high level. And like we want this name to just like have a bunch of shit that's like verifiably attached to it. So that's the first piece. Sorry, that was kind of long. uh, the second piece is we actually built Twitter verification, right? And so like we built the framework for this, and we also built like kind of like a use case to highlight how interesting it is. And so we built a smart contract on Ethereum that basically does two things. One is, sorry, I'm trying to think exactly how it happens. Well, basically at a high level, and like we can double click if people are interested, like it links your domain name to and to a tweet that you post using the Chainlink Oracle, right? And so like if you like it's pretty standard. Like you've seen a lot of places that are like, oh, tweet this and like we'll like give you like 5 internet points or something like that, right? Or it's like you're more likely to get like a giveaway. So it's like a really similar mechanism. But what's novel is like we use the Chainlink Oracle network in order to like actually like in a decentralized way ensure that that was tweeted from like my account, right? As opposed to like just trusting the Twitter API. So that's basically what happens at a high level in order to allow for Twitter verification.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's actually really interesting. I'd be curious if we could like dive into like the ramifications of that as like we head into this like future of like distributed companies, and like now we're seeing a lot of DAOs kind of like cross collaborate, like you're seeing that across the DeFi ecosystem. I'm curious like if you or kind of you guys have kind of like talked about like what this looks like several years down the road, whenever it's kind of, because in a way it kind of creates a like a trustworthy presence where that person collaborating with you um, is who they are, or is who they say they are, right? Does that make sense?
No, sorry.
No. So like it, the way I'm like thinking like 5 to 10 years out in the future, right? Where it kind of like if we continue this trend, it seems like a lot of people are going to be working remote and working for like crypto native companies, and it seems like this is kind of a way to have like a verified identity while remaining anonymous, but also having reputation attached to your actual like internet name, if that makes sense, or your internet identity.
Yeah, so that's like a huge problem space right now that I think a lot of people are tackling in different ways. Um, so like there's a lot of unpack there, right? Like one is like what I said, it's like anti-civil resistance. It's like you are a human, right? Like one account equals one ETH address equals one human. Um, there's also the piece around like in like anon culture and like reputation, which I think is also like important, although like slightly separate, um, because you can like see a world where it's like you're anon, but like there's some there's some reputation score that you hold in the form of like an ERC20 balance, um, that like shows like how legit you are based on like your Git commits if you're a dev, or based on like your Twitter followers or your tweet history or your contributions to some DAO publication. Um, so yeah, I mean like it's just like a really big problem space people are tackling. On the anti-civil resistance piece, like I think proof of humanity is definitely the most interesting one that I've seen. And so it's like Jimmy Regrosa from Claros, it's Santiago blanking on his last name. Thinking about this, it's really, really cool because once you do proof of humanity, that's what they call it, right? You know, one wallet equals one human. Then you can start doing a bunch of like public goods for them and social services. So it's like Santiago is doing this like UBI program in order to like airdrop people who like qualify for some threshold as a human to like get money from this like protocol. So it's essentially like bankrolling UBI, right, from like a decentralized governance perspective. Yeah, I don't know. I'm rambling right now, but it's a pretty big problem space. I think a lot of people are tackling.
No, that's all. I for one, I appreciate your ramble. So please keep them going. I mean, this whole industry, and it's just there's so many different avenues. So I appreciate you kind of touching into that. I actually haven't really heard much about that, so I'll have to look into more of that.
Yeah, I mean, this space is too big. Like, it's too big for any one person to truly grasp like everything about it. That's the beauty of just like having a community talking to folks because it's like we're all just tackling little bits and pieces of it.
And you kind of did touch on like the integrations with the browsers. Can you kind of like highlight like what the advantage is to actually being able to directly integrate with all the different browsers that you can with unstoppable domains?
Yeah, so I mean, the benefit for us is obviously like utility, right? It's like you want ubiquity for these products. If it's like fragmented ubiquity, like that kind of sucks, right? It's like the analogy of like, oh, like you have a cell phone with Verizon, but it only works in the East Coast, right? You got to get another thing for the West Coast. You're like, okay, like why the fuck do I have Verizon, right? Like I might as well just get something else. So it's the same like network effects, right? You want just like ease of use and ubiquity, and so like that's why it's such a ground war, and that's why we're like trying so hard to like fight for these integrations, and why it's like super important. Why it's important for these like apps that actually integrate with us. I mean, we have over 1.2 million domains registered, right? So it's like we carry a decent amount of like users and like clout with us, and so like when we go and like we work with these app teams for integrations, like they know that they have basically like another revenue stream or another user base that they can tap into. So it's like kind of like mutually beneficial for us to work together.
I was looking at your guys' website last night, and I saw that you guys are also, I guess it would be integrated with the graph. Could you kind of touch on what that relationship looks like and what that does for you guys?
Sure. So, I mean, like, I'm just a huge fan of the graph. I think that's just like foundational infrastructure for what we want to do. Like, if you don't have data indexing, like, and you have a fully, you have like a fully auditable, like blockchain or like transaction history you can read, then like, what's the point of like having it being, have it being fully auditable and have it being transparent? It's like it's lost in the noise. Like we're generating like gigabytes of data at this point, right? Of just like state changes and transactions and everything like that. So the graph is really important. Our integration with the graph is basically like we allow for like we index like all of the like activity that blockchain that like our domains use. So it's like every time there's record management and stuff like that. What there is a limitation into is blockchain reads, and so basically hitting the like the resolver contract, right? And so when you hit the resolver contract, it's just the read. You're not changing anything, and that's not something that's recorded basically anywhere. Like no Ethereum client is going to record that event for you. But you can do like new domains minted, like new records written, stuff like that. Things that are actually like involve state changes on Ethereum. And so like we open source that, and like anyone can like leverage that data and like write their own like analyses with it, right? Like we definitely believe in like the openness and permissionless of data because I don't know, that's kind of like the whole fucking point, isn't it, of crypto?
Yeah, I'm actually curious, selfishly curious, as a curator. Have you guys deployed your subgraph to Mainnet?
We have.
Oh,
Yeah,
all
man,
right.
check it out.
Yeah, I'm in that awkward 28-day unthawing period, so it's on the bucket list when that day comes.
Yeah, I mean, to be frank, man, like I don't even know how many people use it. It's just something that we did to like be a good ecosystem participant. There was like no like business mandate behind it. If you be a curator, that'd be dank. And like then I can actually feel like I'm using the end cycles wisely.
Yeah, no, actually, I think I'll ping you just to make sure because there's a lot of rug pulls that happen on these like fake subgraphs. But yeah, I think I found you guys subgraph.
We're not gonna rug you, sir.
That's the worst. You move from DeFi to go to infrastructure and you still get rugged.
And they're all rugs, just different names.
I'm actually curious, switching gears a little bit. We also saw that you guys have a grant program. Do you have any knowledge on that? Could you touch on that?
Sure. So we have a couple. That just shows you the nature of like we're growing so fast. It's like we just do a bunch of crap and have no documentation for it. So we have a grant, I think, with IPFS to talk about building the decentralized web. So that's pretty cool. I think it's like a couple million in there. And then we have a separate one that what we call the Quest, and that's the one that I run. And that's basically like bounties for devs to like do like cool projects and add utility to the Unstoppable ecosystem. So it's like integrating with these open source wallets, building, like the Webflow or like the Wix for IPFS, and adding new social verification smart contracts for the Chainlink integration, and so it's stuff like that. Yeah, that's all the visibility I really have into it. I'm sure there's like at least 2 more grant programs that we have that we've kind of just like thrown out there. I don't know. We gotta be more efficient about that. But sorry, and I think like it gets to a point where it's like, I mean, you look at like Uniswap, you look at some of these DAOs, it's like these people just like have money. Honestly, like money is not the issue. Deployment's the issue, right? It's a human issue. It's like you don't have enough people to organize more, like to give money to other people to add value to ecosystem, right? And so you hear a lot of builders and a lot of VCs, and they're like, oh man, like these DAOs, like they need to spend way more money, right? Like it's if this were like Facebook in 2012, like they'd be blowing cash, right? Because they know the ROI is there, and these DAOs are just like so constrained. It's almost like it's kind of like this funny paradox. It's like you have too much money, not enough people. You can't even hire enough people quickly enough in order to spend this money. I'm not saying that's us, but it's just kind of like a funny observation that it's like, yeah, like you make grant programs. I don't know. Hopefully, shit figures itself out.
No, that's actually a really interesting dynamic to point out because I feel like that's it. It's a paradox. Like I said, that is not normal to have a new company essentially and be flush with cash, but be lacking human capital.
I mean, man, like we've doubled in 3 months since I've been here. 3-4 months I've been here. Like we still need more people. Like I would love to double my engineering team. Like that would be sick as fuck. We can't get enough people. Like, I mean, that gets into a broader issue. It's like I'm trying to hire Web3 devs, right? Like I need devs that know Solidity. There's just not that many Solidity devs, right? So it's like, okay, do you hire a Web2 dev, you train them, but it's like you don't even find enough Web2 devs that are like even interested in like crypto, right? So it's kind of like this land grab right now. I think the whole industry is feeling it. It's like shit. Like let's not even talk about from a dev perspective. Like let's talk about community. Let's talk about marketing. Like there are not enough people interested. Like too much money, not enough people. It's a big fucking problem.
I'm interested, Loki. Come find me. Kind of switching a little bit to like the future of unstoppable domains. Like, what do you guys have planned? I guess like on the roadmap for the rest of this year, in terms of like big releases. Anything you can talk about?
I can't talk about too much. as I'm sure everyone says that when they get asked this question. I will give you 3 tidbits. One is L2. Like, the world is L2, right? Like, that's where every dApp is moving. And I think we've said this publicly, so I'm not going to get in trouble for saying this. We want to move to L2. That's our highest priority right now. Because what happens right now that you guys know how it happens underneath the hood, when you add more information to your domain, right? When you add information to the resolver contract, you have to pay a gas fee, right? And that kind of confuses people. Like, let's say you want to change your ETH address, right? You have to pay like $3 for that, and they're like, "What the fuck?" Like a lot of our users are like, a lot of our customers, like, they don't know what's happening underneath the hood, right? So it's like, if you don't communicate that, or even if you communicate it, it's still fucking complex. But it's like, people get pissed. They're like, "What the hell? Like, this is unusable. Like, why would I?" Right? Like, you think about it from like a Web2 standpoint. Like, if I change like my username for Twitter, like, I'm not paying $3 for it. That's like horseshit, right? And so that's super high priority for us. Like, we want to be insanely cheap so that we can subsidize it as a company and not have users pay for it. That's one tidbit. Not anything controversial at all. The second tidbit is we want more utility for these domains. And so when we look at the use cases for domains, therefore resolving decentralized websites and therefore payments, that's cool, but there's way more that we can do. And there's a huge, huge white space about what we can explore. And in about a couple weeks, we're about to unveil something super sick that I've been working really, really hard on. So excited for that to come out. But just know that it's going to add a ton of utility to why you want a domain in the first place. The last piece is just 2.
We'll take the
We'll
tidbit.
take it. I love this suspense. It's like just 2.
It was all planned.
I'm sure I had a third one. I forgot it though.
Chase, you want to touch on that other? I think that was your question, that last one.
Yeah. What I know you had kind of touched on this already. It sounds like you're looking for a lot of developers, but what jobs are you kind of looking for, like in the near term future? Like, you're looking for program managers, project managers. What skill sets are you guys needing?
Yeah, I would say, like, in order of like highest priority to lowest. I mean, they're all high priority. I gotta make people feel bad about themselves.
Yeah, low pri. I'm not a developer.
Honestly, the highest priority is actually not developers. I actually think we're okay with developers. We have Ethereum OGs that are just fucking amazing. These guys are amazing. I've worked with a shit ton of devs in my career. These guys are insanely amazing. No, but the most important thing is product managers, honestly, like people like me. So we have 2 PMs in our team. It's me and Michael. Is Michael on? No, but he's pretty well-versed in crypto Twitter as well. So I do platforms, and so I do like I do new experiments. I do integrations, stuff like that. Michael, like, I would say, like, I'm probably like the more Web3 native PM, and then Michael's more of like the Web2 PM. So he does like the actual website. So he does like the e-commerce flow. He does our mobile app, stuff like that. And so we're pretty slammed because it's like, I mean, Michael's doing the job of like 3 PMs maybe. It's like no PM should be e-commerce and mobile. And then our e-commerce team is like kind of like this Frankenstein. It's like, it has DevOps too, so it has like the backend infra. So it has like data availability, uptime, right? Like API response time, like stuff like that. Like that's too much work for him. Like, we need to clone Michael. For me, like, I'm getting pretty slammed too, because it's like I kind of have 3 things on my plate. One is like I do platform, so I do tooling. But I also do experience, which is like it's like slightly different. It's like more of like, how do you onboard developers as opposed to like what tools can you give them to like actually use our products. And I'm also doing like community, and so like this, it's like going to hackathons, running the grants program, stuff like that. And so pre-slam too. So that's that. That's the most important one, I think, for us PMs. Devs, obviously, still super important. And then the third thing I think would be, I think we need more like, maybe we want more like integration engineers. And so slightly different from like SWEs, like normal devs. Well, not normal, but these people like help our partners like integrate. And like I think we need more of that because it's like our integration is like non-trivial. And then we of course still need more like growth people. I think that's still super important. We need more data analytics people. Like we're basically just like putting our finger to the wind. We're like, oh, like should probably do that. So I mean, we need everything for like a lack of a better answer, but I'd say like those five are pretty important. They're top of mind for me.
That's awesome. So if you're listening, reach out. Don't be a stranger. The help is needed.
Yeah, I would. So I would say, I don't know where I'd rank it, but something that is really really important is a community team. And we can go down this rabbit hole if you're interested. But I think community in a crypto company or a Web3 company is super super important. Right? That's like you hear the term. It's like when you build open source software, like you can fork code, but you can't fork a community. What you also can't really fork code, as we've seen with a lot of this like Binance Smart Chain stuff. But yeah, you definitely can't fork community. And I would say our community is still very nascent. It's small, but it's small. It's mighty, but still small. And that's something that I probably in the me and Mike Imperiali is on. Like we're probably the only people thinking about this at our company, and so we really need to scale that because like getting a community of people who think about this stuff that don't work full time on Unstoppable is like imperative. Like truly just like insanely important for like the health of a Web2 like a Web3 company.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. We're we talk about it a lot, but we're big fans of Metcalfe's law on a lot of our investments. But I think even just like from a like product perspective or user perspective, you know, it's the most important thing. So
yeah, and I would say like Metcalfe's law is super important for sure for like network effects, but it's like I think Web3 just like really supercharges it. Like I read this article. I don't remember the exact formula of it, but it's like when you have intrinsic like economic gain from like this network effects for each participant, right? When you look at like tokenomics of like some of these DAOs and protocols, like it just like it makes Metcalfe's law just like insanely more impactful because it's like people become super users, they have skin in the game, right? It's like totally different than what we've seen with like existing systems of like the telephone and email and stuff like that.
Yeah, I guess like around community, Jim, like what are like the barriers you guys are facing right now in terms of acquisition and actually getting new users involved in unstoppable domains? And I mean, you have to kind of be a little bit more of an advanced crypto user, right, to even want an address. So I'm curious, like, what kind of barriers are you facing in that arena?
Yeah, so I'd say there's probably like three barriers. I call it like there's a product barrier, there is a actual like community activation barrier, and then lastly, I think there's a bit of like a top of funnel barrier. And so on the product side, it's like I said, like you only really do like two things with these domains, right? So like that's just tough for like people to participate if they want to build on top of it because like the surface area is quite small. So that's why it's been like really important for me, like priority number one, to like add more surface area for these devs to like hack around with our stuff, right? It's like we go to hackathon, it's like, oh, like you can have a website or you can do payments. And then people who are like fucking around with like 1,000x leverage on like Aave or something, they're like, huh, yeah, I'm not gonna do that. And you're like, damn it. Like come build with us. But it's so we're trying to make it more enticing. So that's one piece. I'd say the activation barrier is real. So again, like only really 2 people thinking about community at our company. We have what, like 3,000 people over our Discord. They're like, I want to volunteer, I want to volunteer, and you're like, whoa, like it would be really cool if you could like tell me what you want to do, right? But obviously that's not the world that we live in, and so you kind of need to like spend a lot of human capital to like provide like a kind of like a framework or structure for people to actually like participate and be involved, right? And you also want to think about like what is like minimum threshold of involvement for like people to feel ownership over this community. And so this is something I think a ton about. It's like how do you actually like run a playbook for this like viral loop of community participation, right? So it's like we go to our Discord. It's like okay, like you have to say hello. Like if you say hello, I got you, right? But most people who join a Discord, they don't say hello. So it's like, how do you do that? How do you put them through a funnel of like actual activation? That's super important and not something that we fully optimized. And then the last piece is like top of funnel. It's like when you look at our branding, it's like very normie friendly. It's like a credit card payment flow. It's like we abstract away a decent amount of like the actual crypto stuff. And so when you get people join a Discord, which is like inherently very dev heavy, very crypto native, like I want to help, but I'm a Web2 developer. What's IPFS? And you're like, oh man, like, can you be helpful? Like maybe I'll try to find a place for you. But I mean, for right now, like I try to prioritize people that are already familiar, and I don't need to like, educate them while they also provide value for the community. So that's something that I don't know. I don't know if it's like truly solvable based on like the brand of what we're trying to do as a company versus like what I would like to see from a dev community. But Mike's way smarter than me, so I'm sure he's gonna figure it out, and I'll just like fucking I don't know, drink a beer and like hang out or something.
No, I think just staying active and continuing to build a product is probably the best solution, because as you guys continue to improve and more features are rolled out, eventually, right, you'll hit the nail on the head as long as you continue to be active. And you guys already have, like you said, over 1 million domains actually registered, which is incredible. Super Chase, do you guys have any other questions?
No, I just wanted to say, Jim, thank you for coming on and just putting all this info out, and I'm just soaking it up like a sponge, and I'm sure a lot of other people in here are as well. So we really appreciate your time.
Yeah, plus one to that. I think I might have to get a domain, an unstoppable one. I'm curious though. Why did you go with the .dow? I could see some benefits like down the line with it, but I'd be curious.
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on, guys. Like these are some Giga Brain questions you asked. So I definitely appreciated the convo. On the .dow piece, I mean, the short answer is like I'm a brand, right? Or I see myself as a brand. That's why I spend so much time on Twitter talking to people. Obviously, it's a community, but at the end of the day, like I want to build myself as a brand, and I want to reward the people who follow me on this journey. And so later on the line, like there will likely be something around the lines of some sort of community governance, like a DAO, around this brand. So this is something that I grabbed early and will probably not activate for a while, but that is my long-term vision.
That's awesome. That's kind of like in line with the benefits down the line of what I was getting at, a bit kind of being like a DAO. No, that's awesome. Also, random last point on the article was it Reed's Law possibly that you were talking about earlier?
Maybe, yeah.
Okay.
How do you spell that?
REED. Essentially, it talks about the value of a network increases dramatically when people form subgroups for collaboration and sharing.
Oh,
So
interesting. No, that's
like,
not what I observed,
okay.
but I will definitely check that one out. I'll try to DM you
For sure.
the one that I was looking at.
Very based. yeah, guys, I think we could close it out here. Jim, really appreciate you, taking the time out of your day to hop on and chat with us. It was awesome, man.
Yeah, man. Thanks again. Again, huge big ups to you guys for having me on. You guys asked probably like the most Giga Brain questions I've been asked all week. So thank you.
We made the cut.
Welcome to the base space.